I think that, the reason the power's off is because they're trimming some trees, because our neighbor has some trees that are over the power lines, and if there's a very windy storm, and then we lose our electricity, and in the middle of winter, so it's very, very kind of them. We're not complaining that the power's off. Yeah. Also, Venerable Tarpa just told me that it looks like the inspector for the frames that they're building in now will come tomorrow, and Friday morning you will have the experience of seeing them pour a 10-foot concrete wall. So if you've never had that experience, and to see them do it for a Buddhist monastery, then this is your opportunity. Yeah. So I think these kinds of experiences are quite good, because so often, I don't know about you, but I just kind of think, well, everything's there already. I don't think of what people had to do to make it. I just think of, me coming and what it's going to do for me. And I know for myself personally, just getting the Abbey, I had never really thought before of where does the water come from when it comes out the tap. Because you just turn the tap and the water comes, doesn't it? Yeah, and there's some water system somewhere, but you never think of it. But when you have to build a water system that costs $160,000, then you really notice where the water comes from. Yeah, and when there's enormous trucks coming up, we have 5 3,000-gallon tanks buried under there, and you see them dig this big hole and put these tanks in, and the whole place is dug up, and putting in pipes. And then it makes you think, oh my goodness, like all these sentient beings are involved with my having a glass of water or my taking a shower. And then we had to put in a second well. So then, all the people coming out to find out where to put the well and digging it, and I mean, it's the whole shenanigans with that. I shouldn't, maybe not shenanigans, the whole, whatever happens. Rigmarole. Although Craig's in constructions, and he went like this when I said shenanigans, so, it really makes you think of how many sentient beings. And then, how many people donated money to the Abbey to build this $160,000 water system so that you can take a shower. When you've all taken showers here. So, do you ever think of like all the people and everything that went behind your shower? Yeah. So this is the kind of thing, when we're thinking about the kindness of sentient beings, this is something we really think about. How many beings we're dependent on for even the simplest thing in our life. And similarly, before I came here, I never thought, you flush the toilet and everything vanishes and that's it. But when you have to build a septic system, and you have to have somebody design the septic system, and you have to think about what kind of septic system you're going to get and how much it costs and whether it's gravity fed or whether it has a pump and how many, what do you call it, the lines? The drain field, but each drain field has several lines in it. How many of those and where you're going to put it, and oops, there's a fence where you want to put the drain field, and You can't have it too close to the fruit trees. You can't have it too close to your water, your well. And then it's like, oh my goodness, flushing the toilet is a complicated process. And there's a lot of people involved in it. And, it's really suitable to be aware of that and to think of that and to be grateful to all those people. Yeah? So there's all these things in our life that we, so often just don't even think about where they came from. We just think, oh, they should be there for me to use. Yeah? And even the roads we drive on. Yeah? Do you ever stop and thank the guys who are working on the roads, either in the heat of the day or at 2 or 3 in the morning? We usually go, why are they doing it at this hour when I'm here? They should do it some other time. But do we stop and say thank you? Yeah? Or the guys who are doing the electricity, who are dangling from, heights to put in the electricity or put in the telephone. And, we just say, oh, well, when are you going to be done? We don't say, oh, thank you very much. The people who pick up the garbage, those people we really have to thank. There's some very important jobs in our society that people don't get paid very much for, but they're very important jobs. And picking up the garbage is a really important one. I was in Tel Aviv when their garbage picker-uppers went on strike. Let me tell you, then you really see the kindness of the people who collect the garbage. And you see how not only your convenience and, having a pleasant smell is important, but your health is totally dependent on people picking up the garbage. Yeah? And do we ever stop and thank those people? Yeah? So this is all part of, putting our Buddhist practice into work in our daily life. And having it really affect how we look at the things that we use and encounter on a daily life basis. And when we do this, then we see kindness all over the place. Yeah?
I wanted to share a quick story. How many of us will thank the officer that stops us on the freeway and gives us a speeding ticket?
Yeah.
I had that incident happen, and but I didn't even see him. He was in the center divide, very busy freeway, and he had his, that thing out that tells you how fast you're going. Anyway, I stopped over, and I was so in my stuff about my not being very comfortable at all. Didn't say a word until after he took off. And it didn't even dawn on me to thank him for protecting me and everyone else and for stopping me from speeding, even though I was going like 3 miles over the speed limit. But still, I needed that. I needed to be stopped. And it was until after he stopped, until after he took off, I thought, why couldn't I have said thank you?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, this is a very good example of how even the people who sometimes annoy us, or even sometimes really harm us, actually help us in many ways. Yeah, because they make us get our act together, don't they?
The last, I went on a retreat in Mexico last year, and it was really, really hot, and there was one small water tank, and we ran out of water. And taking a shower was like 18 people with like a little pipe like that big, with a tiny little bit of water dripping out of it. And you couldn't, of course, drink any of the water. And then the water that you washed your hands with was real dirty. And so you had to use the bottled water to brush your teeth, and it was hard being in a retreat in that setting, because it was 100 degrees during the day, so you're sweating and you're getting pretty dirty. And I was thinking, man, I like the Abbey. So really every day when I turn my water on and that water comes out, I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. It was actually very, very shocking to me when I took a bus outside of Mexico City, and you're driving for like a good hour and a half with millions of people to the left and to the right of the freeway that live in the most horrid conditions. It's hot. They don't have running water. There's garbage all over the place. And I wasn't complaining too much when I got back from that trip. But then, of course, as time goes by, you get used to stuff again, right?
Right. And then our complaining mind chips in, doesn't it? We will always find something to complain about. Because, if you live, let's say, in the standard, of those Mexicans you were referring to, then you will complain about having dirty water, whatever. When you initially have good water, oh, this is great. But then you don't have the one that mixes the hot and cold water together in one pot. So then you complain about that. You want something else. And if we watch, anything we have, it's never satisfactory. We always want more, we always want better. And always we're comparing ourselves to the people around us and what they have, and we're wanting what they have. Yeah? And so as soon as you move from one environment to the next, or if you move up on the scale, then you want more. You want what those people have. So this is really a mind training practice to create satisfaction. Because satisfaction does not come from possessing more goods. Satisfaction comes from what's happening in the mind and being able to say what I have is good enough. And how many of us can look around and say what I have is good enough? Or even for ourselves to say what I am is good enough. I'm good enough the way I am. I can improve. Yeah, being good enough in this moment doesn't mean I can't improve. But how many of us really accept where we're at right now and say, oh, I'm satisfied. I've done a good job so far. I could have done worse. I've done what I could. I made some mistakes, but I'm learning from them. I'm going to try and do better. Yeah, and have some sort of satisfaction with our life the way it is. So cultivating satisfaction is a very important Buddhist practice, actually. Remember, those of you who were here for the shamatha retreat, one of the conditions for having a shamatha retreat long-term, to really train in the practice, is to have a mind that's satisfied. Whoa! Yeah, because you can see when the mind's not satisfied, you sit down to meditate, and what goes through your mind? I want this, I want that, it shouldn't be like that, it shouldn't be like this. Why don't people do this? Why don't people do that? Yeah. And then we get in our habit of trying to rearrange the world, complaining about the world, giving everybody our advice about how they can change and how they should change. And they tell us to mind our own business, and then we feel neglected and not heard, and we complain some more, and we lock ourselves in our room and have a pity party, or we explode with anger, against other people, because they're not listening to us, they're not heeding our advice, they're not thinking about our needs. And, the root is the dissatisfied mind, our own dissatisfied mind. that's always craving more and better, more and better, more and better. Yeah? And when you really look at it in your life, it's really rather shocking. Because we usually don't think of our dissatisfied mind as an obstacle. Yeah? We think instead the problem is that the external world doesn't conform to what we want. And when dissatisfaction arises in our mind, we think we have every right to demand of the world that it give us what we want immediately, without delay. You know, especially Americans. Yeah, there's a certain kind of, dare I say it, arrogance, do you think? Sometimes that we have.
Sense of entitlement.
Yeah, a real sense of entitlement, you know, to with the rest of the world, that we should be able to have what we want. You know, we should be able to have all the oil we want at a low price.
For free.
Yeah, or free. Well, we'll pay a little bit. But, you know, that kind of mind, instead of, you know, really thinking again, where does this stuff come from, and what are the people's lives like who work on an oil rig? Oh my goodness, you know, I think that must be not a very easy job to have. We had somebody here once who worked on an oil rig. Do you remember who it was? There
was that young man and his wife who came up from South Dakota? Or?
Yeah, there was them, but there was also some other man I met who was like the engineer who was... Rick Bullender.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he was an engineer who planned about oil rigs. And, you know, I had never again, you know, you get in a car, you never think of where the petrol comes from. And to have him tell us about life on an oil rig and how planning different things and, you know, the things he had to do to make sure that the rig was safe for the people who live there. Because we talked to him not too long after one of these, you know, I don't know if it was the Gulf one or there was another one after that.
We talked to him in the spring.
Yeah, so it was a more recent one. But really, you know, thinking about what people do and what they have to go through so that we can just get in our car and go wherever we want. You know? So this kind of thing, you know, thinking about the dissatisfied mind, thinking about the kindness of others, thinking about how interrelated we are and how we couldn't live our lives without other living beings. Yeah. And when you see that very clearly, then what His Holiness says really makes sense. Because His Holiness says, if you want to be happy, cherish others. Yeah? In other words, we live in an interdependent world. If we cherish the people who we share the planet with, they will be happy. They will keep... Actually, his sentence started with, if you want to be selfish, at least be selfishly wise and cherish others. Okay? The idea being that if we cherish the people who we share the planet with, they will continue doing their various jobs that we are the beneficiaries of. That we reap the benefits of them doing their job. So hurting the people who are doing those jobs doesn't make sense because it's eventually going to hurt us. Yeah? And how much do we think about that? Especially the whole thing that's happening now about education. And, you know, if the society doesn't fund education, and I don't mean these ridiculous tests that teachers are forced to give kids. You know, I was a teacher before, so I know a little bit about it. But, you know, if we don't really fund education for all kids, no matter what kind of families they come from, then what kind of society are we going to have in 20, 30 years? We're not. Yeah. Education is so crucially important. And yet we're making it harder for elementary school kids to learn. We're making it harder for kids to go to college. You know, they're saddled with so much debt afterwards. But we don't see the interdependence, you know, and the whole causality of what we do now, conditioning what happens later, and who's going to experience the result of it. Yeah. It's not just going to be, oh, the teachers have lower pay, too bad. Society's not going to have people with enough education. And that's going to affect the entire country. And if you're talking about economic woes now, imagine what happens if we have a society where the kids now, when they're adults, don't have suitable education. Then what happens to the economy? So this whole thing of, thinking about interdependence really opens our heart to see that we're not just talking about being kind to other people and how nice that is, and patting ourselves on the back for being kind. We're talking about how to survive. Yeah, we're talking about how to survive. And I remember His Holiness so often, he talks about the ants and the bees. And how the ants and the bees have to collaborate to survive, because you can't be one bee on your own or one ant on your own, and there's no way you can pick yourself up by your own bootstraps in an ant colony or a beehive. It doesn't work that way. Everybody is dependent on everybody else. And even though there's a queen ant and a queen bee, that leader is totally dependent upon what the worker ants and do they call them worker bees?
Yes.
Yeah, worker bees, what those do. So even though the queen is essential and she's just sitting there laying eggs, she can't do that except for the kindness of all the beings who are risking their lives outside of the hive to get what's needed to create the food that nourishes her. Yeah. So the whole hive is totally, they collaborate. I don't know that ants, it would be an interesting thing to investigate. Sometimes you might have one colony fight with another, but within an ant colony, do they ever have a civil war?
Yeah.
Do they do?
Over what?
Over, there could be many queens in one colony, especially bee colonies. All of the workers also lay eggs, but the queen eats them. I mean, it's really, really complex society, really, really complex, and there's definitely struggle.
Because I thought that when they made new queens, the new queens flew away.
Only to mate, and then sometimes they come back to the nest after they mate.
Oh, they do.
Sometimes.
Oh, kind of like human beings. Hi, Mom. I have four kids for you to take care of. Okay, so maybe they do have some internal strife, but I think far less than human beings have. Yeah.
No atomic war or anything.
Yeah. They really have to work together just to survive. And so, if we have that kind of outlook of how dependent we are on others, then being kind is part of keeping ourselves alive. Yeah, it's just practical. It's, we shouldn't think of ourselves as some great spiritual practitioners because we're kind. Because it's just absolutely what's needed to stay alive. We can't do it on our own. You just can't. Okay? So, when we meditate on this very deeply, then something in our mind really shifts. And I remember Lama Zopa telling a story once, because he grew up in, he is the incarnation of a Lama at Tamu. And, and they have the custom there, the people bring offerings to the Lamas. And Rinpoche was telling us, in that area, he was born in the Solo-Khumbu area of Nepal. Basically, what people eat is potatoes. Sometimes some sampa, sometimes some yak butter, but potatoes is the mainstay. And, rice is a luxury up there. So he was telling us that, some of these very poor people who live in the mountains would come and offer him some potatoes. And, when he was meditating on the kindness of sentient beings, he said it was so hard for him to eat even one potato that these people offered him when he really thought of what they had to go through to grow it. Yeah. What the suffering they went through to grow that potato, what it took to grow that. And then they turned around and offered it to him. And he said it was so hard for him to eat it. And it really made him think that he has to, practice well. That's his way of repaying the kindness. He has to practice well. He has to subdue his own self-centered thought of I want what I want when I want it. Because look at these people and how much they suffer because they have faith and they give him a few potatoes. So he told that story many years ago, but it stuck, So we're the same way, aren't we? Yeah? Everything we eat, even if you go to the grocery store and pay for it yourself, it still came due to the kindness of others. And even the money you have to go to the grocery store came from others. We always think, this is my money. I deserve more money, my money. But, when we were born, we were really broke. Weren't we? We didn't have a nickel to our name when we were born. And we survived. Isn't that amazing? How many years did we survive with no money? And then when we got some money, it's because other people gave it to us. Yeah. We might have done some work, or we may not have done some work, but it doesn't matter. Still, the money came from other people. And still, for many, many years, we were totally broke. And we survived due to others' kindness. Okay, or others' money, I should say. So, contemplating this is very important for developing love. Because love, remember, sees sentient beings in beauty, sees them as, affectionable, worthy of our affection, sees them as lovable, and wants them to be happy. And so this meditation on, is very key for developing an attitude of love. Because we can't just tell ourselves to love people. We all know that doesn't work. We have to work with our mind so that our mind sees others as lovable. Because the tyranny of the self-centered mind, how it's yapping all the time in the background, that makes life difficult for us. So that's why, there's so much talk, especially in Shantideva's method of generating bodhicitta, about overcoming the self-centered mind. Or, and it's going to take a while to overcome it, so let's at least talk about decreasing it. Yeah? And how important that is for our own happiness as well as for the happiness of others. Okay, so let me come back to here. Yeah, what we were talking about. So, again, talking about happiness and the causes of happiness and wishing sentient beings to have those. So like I was saying, thinking of their kindness and then also thinking of their unsatisfactory conditions, those two things are the chief things that are important for arising a feeling of compassion and for arising love, wanting them to have happiness and not suffering. Okay? So when we're wishing, we were talking yesterday about the kinds of happiness that we wish. So, we're not just wishing living beings to have the happiness that comes from external objects and worldly happiness, because as we were talking yesterday, that happiness is not stable. It comes and it goes very quickly. That it also brings a ton of other problems with it. Sometimes it involves creating negative karma to get that happiness, or we get those objects that make us happy, then we create more negative karma, through how we use them. So we're not, when we say sentient beings have happiness and its causes, don't stay stuck on worldly happiness. That's not the chief. We want sentient beings to have that, yes, because they do need a certain degree of worldly happiness to practice the Dharma. But I think one of the big happinesses that we're really wishing them is the happiness that comes from practicing the Dharma. The happiness that comes from slowly overcoming the self-centered thought, or slowly generating renunciation of samsara, or the happiness that comes from letting go of anger and learning how to forgive, the happiness that comes from deep states of concentration, the happiness that comes even from knowing impermanence and that all your worldly things are going to disappear. That, before we do that meditation, we think, being aware of everything's impermanence is going to make me really unhappy because I want to hold on to everything. I don't want to think about it's all going to disappear. But, when you really do the meditation and after you accumulate some merit so that your mind can understand the meditation properly, then you see that realizing impermanence is a huge relief, and it's opening a door to have happiness. Because when we actually realize impermanence, in the correct way, then we stop hankering after all these impermanent things. And then when we stop hankering after them, we become so much more satisfied with what we have. And we have so much more time to do meditation that brings a whole other kind of happiness. Yeah? So instead of seeing, meditation on impermanence as something scary and frightful that we don't want to do because it's going to make us feel more insecure than we already feel, realize that the reason we feel insecure now is because of our attachment, because of our ignorance, because of our craving, and that awareness of impermanence reduces ignorance and attachment and craving. Okay? Are you getting me? Because this is important, Because really sometimes people, when they hear, everything is impermanent, they get really kind of depressed, like, you're taking away all my happiness from me. As if talking about impermanence creates impermanence. And if you don't talk about impermanence, it means everything's permanent and stable. And so essentially what we're doing is just continuing to delude ourselves and rejoicing about it, and being afraid to see things the way they actually are, because we're afraid reality is going to make us suffer. How is, it's not reality that makes us suffer. It's all of our wrong views, all of our distorted conceptions, all of our mental afflictions. Those are what make us suffer. It's the wisdom that realizes reality that frees us. But even understanding this, it takes time, and it takes really working with our mind. Yeah, because yesterday some people were commenting that they come here and they feel some resistance. They say, I don't want to hear about that. Yeah, I don't want to hear about that, and I don't want to hear about that, and I don't want to hear about that. And why? Because those things, all the Buddha's talking about is common sense, the way things are. But we don't want to hear about that because it challenges all of our afflicted ways of seeing things, all of our misconceptions. And, we say ignorance is bliss, but we're wrong. Yeah, we're really wrong. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance makes us miserable. Yeah. Okay? So, when we feel resistance, when our mind is going, stop and ask yourself, what am I resistant to? What is it in me that feels challenged? And when you figure out what it is within you that feels challenged, then ask yourself, is that bad to challenge that part of me? Or is challenging that part of me something, and in the long term, is going to bring me more happiness? Like getting stopped for speeding, as getting stopped for speeding and getting a ticket, in the long term, going to bring you more happiness. Probably. Mm-hmm.
The physical resistance. Okay, I'm starting to see that this is my mind lying to me again and telling me that, you don't need to do that. But when the pain gets, I gotta call it loud, when it gets very loud, how do you work through that?
Okay. So we have this kind of voice in our mind, don't we? That saying, it's the self-centered thought. It says, do this, do that, follow me, I'm going to make you happy. Don't do that, that's going to make you suffer. That's not resistance, that's wisdom. If you follow this so-called wisdom they're teaching, then you're really going to have problems. So follow me instead, because I teach you relax. Have some ice cream, have some chocolate cake. So when that voice gets really loud, like you're asking, and it's yapping away, first of all, one thing to do is just to say, oh, there's that voice. There's that. Yeah, to recognize it. Yeah, and say, okay, there's my ignorant voice. There's my self-centered voice. Yeah. Do some breathing. Come back to your breath. And as you come back to your breath and you let your body, mind relax, then you're starting to release some of the tension that yapping voice creates within you. And then you remember, I'm following the Buddha's teachings, and the Buddha went through all this trouble of getting enlightened and giving teachings out of compassion. Yeah, I can trust the Buddha. What the Buddha's teaching is not false. It's not meant, Buddha's not trying to deceive me. He's not trying to get lots of followers. What he's saying is what he knows from his own experience. So I can trust that. And I need to give myself a little bit of compassion and a little bit of empathy because I have this yapping voice, so I can say to myself, I'm going to follow the Buddha's way and I'm going to do it slowly. I don't have to be perfect immediately. That's not what the Buddha's telling me. I don't have to do the whole path right all at once and develop renunciation by tomorrow and develop bodhicitta by the next day, So I'm not going to sit here and pressure myself because that's not what's being asked, I care about myself. I respect myself. I want myself to be happy. I'm worthy to be happy. So I'm going to do this practice step by step in a gradual, comfortable way, and that's good enough. And so I don't need to listen to this mind, because the self-centered mind, it starts out by saying, oh, don't follow that, if you do that, you're going to get too stressed, and, kind of if you really practice the Dharma, then, then you're not going to sleep at night, and then you're going to get too stressed, and you're going to do this and that and the other thing, and it's just too hard, and so don't do it. That yapping voice says that. Okay. But then, when we start to practice the Dharma, then the yapping voice changes and it says, you've got to be perfect by next Tuesday. You've got to actualize everything immediately. You've got to do every single practice perfect the first time you do it. You have to learn every single teaching with all the details immediately. And that yapping voice puts this incredible pressure on us. So we have to, recognize that, this self-centered voice is very sneaky. It changes, it is camouflage all the time. So we just have to recognize it and say, I caught you. I caught you. Don't play peekaboo with me because I found you. And I'm not going to follow you. Okay? And so that way we can practice, but we practice in a way that is suitable for us, in a way that's comfortable, without pressurizing ourselves, without having unrealistic expectations of ourselves or others. What I tell people is just be content to create the cause. Don't worry about the result. Just do what you can on a day-to-day level to create some good karma and to avoid creating bad karma. Okay? So, when we're wishing others to have happiness and its causes, we're wishing them things like, may they not listen to their self-centered mind. May their self-centered mind become, overwhelmed by the wisdom. May other beings' love and compassion, make their own self-centered mind obsolete, so that they don't need to suffer from their self-centered mind. When you really train your mind thinking like that, wishing sentient beings to have the happiness of being free from the self-centered mind, and wishing them to have the causes of that happiness, all the practice that goes before it to subdue the self-centered mind, then you start looking at sentient beings in a different way. And all those people that you used to think were so obnoxious and were out to get you, you realize they're suffering from their own self-centered mind. They didn't do these things to me that I found distasteful because they were really out to get me, because they wanted to hurt me. They were doing that because their self-centered mind was running the show. And they weren't aware their self-centered mind was running the show. And so their self-centered mind wound up hurting not only me, but them. Because when they do these things, then they're the ones who are creating the negative karma that they're going to have to experience the result for. Yeah? And so why should I be angry at them? There's no reason to be angry at them because they're controlled by their self-centered mind. If I'm going to be angry, I should be angry at their self-centered mind. Because they are not their self-centered mind, just in the same way that we are not our self-centered mind. Self-centered mind is just this yapping voice, And here's somebody else. We all know in our lives, we've all had the experience of being overwhelmed by our self-centered mind, haven't we? Not once, but many, many, many times. Yeah? Yeah? I think we can all right off the bat think of many times when we've done things and afterwards we said, what did I do? And it was simply because we were overwhelmed by the self-centered mind. So we know what that's like. Okay. Can we look at other living beings who are overwhelmed by their self-centered mind and have compassion for them? Knowing that they're creating negative karma? Knowing that they don't have freedom? Knowing that they want to be happy and not suffer, but their mind is so clouded due to ignorance and due to self-centeredness that they can't see how to create the causes for the happiness they want, and instead they're creating causes for suffering? Yeah. It would, if we can train our minds to look at other living beings in that way, then it's so easy to forgive others. Forgiving them is a snap. There's no resistance because their situation is so obvious. And we know what their situation is because we know it's our situation too. And so then rather than get angry and hate other living beings, we have compassion that wishes them, wouldn't it be wonderful if they were free of their self-preoccupied mind? Wouldn't it be wonderful if they were free of ignorance? May they have all the causes and conditions to meet the Dharma and practice the Dharma so that they can attain freedom from ignorance and self-preoccupation. May they have those. I want them to have those causes. And then you start really thinking, there's actually many causes. Yeah, they have to meet the Dharma, which means the Dharma has to exist in the world. There has to be teachers who teach it properly. There have to be scriptures to study. There have to be communities so that they can learn the Dharma together with other people. There has to be retreat centers and Dharma centers and monasteries so that all these people can practice the Dharma. Yeah? They have to, from their own side, have faith. They have to have a mind that's open and receptive. May they have that open and receptive mind. May they be free of their laziness that makes them make so many excuses for not practicing. Just as my lazy mind makes up my excuses for not practicing. But may they be free of that lazy mind, just as I want to be free of my lazy mind. Yeah. May they have wise teachers who can guide them. May they, when they meet wise teachers, know they met wise teachers and follow them. Because lots of people meet extraordinary teachers. And like I was saying, with one of my teachers, because his diction isn't so great, then people just leave, And it's like, oh, you guys don't know what you're missing. Or because the teaching isn't in, perfect English, then, they don't want to come. So, to think, may they have these conditions which are going to enable them to learn. May they be free of all these hindrances, that block them from practicing. and that prevent them from destroying those hindrances. Because the same hindrances we want to destroy are the ones that are preventing us from practicing. Yeah? Isn't it? Yeah, the same ones that we say I want to destroy are the ones that are telling us now, oh, you don't need to practice, it's okay. Yeah? And so it's the same situation for others. And so being able to look at others in this way and have compassion and have forgiveness and shut down our judgmental mind and shut down our own demanding mind. Okay? So this is something it's very important to do. And when we do it, it has a profound impact on our generating bodhicitta. But it also has a profound impact on how we live our life. And it gives us so much more mental peace right now. Yeah. Because we begin to see, why don't I have mental peace? Ignorance, self-preoccupation. Yeah. So actually, all these beings are helping me on the path and being the objects through which I can overcome my own ignorance and self-preoccupation by wishing them to be free of ignorance and self-preoccupation. Yeah.
Is that the part of I will cause them to have happiness?
It's related to that, yeah. I will cause them. It means I'm going to jump in and do something about it.
Okay, that's coming later.
Yeah. Well, I'm wishing it, but I'm going to cause it means I'm going to be active. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I've been impressed too by how little it takes to be kind. I've had 2 spectacularly public catastrophes in my life, and the people that came out and said that they wanted to repay a kindness that me or my husband or a family member had done, and we can't even remember what it was, but it was something that was important to them, and they were willing to share it again.
Wow. Very nice. So you really see the kindness of others.
And it's very touching.
Mm-hmm. Very touching. Especially when you can't even remember what you did.
Right.
Yeah. But they're remembering it. Mm-hmm. Oh.
Am I understanding correctly then, it seems I learned psychology classes or whatever, and you hear it all the time too, that, take care of yourself first, because if you don't, then you can't help others.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be kind of in reverse, what you're saying.
Okay. This is taking care of yourself and taking care of others comes to the same point.
Okay.
You don't have to choose. Yeah. When you wisely take care of yourself, you are taking care of others. When you wisely take care of others, you are taking care of yourself. When you unskillfully take care of yourself, which means self-indulgence, then you're not really even taking care of yourself or others. When you're taking care of others unskillfully, meaning you're trying to run their lives and tell them what to do and control them, or punish them for not, following you, then you're neither taking care of them nor yourself. Mm-hmm.
And it's like this young family that I know who are developing some real resentment of one of their mothers because she refuses to take care of her health, she refuses to exercise, she refuses to eat right, and therefore she's always sick, always broke, and they're always having to drop everything and go over there and save her from her latest, emergency. And they're feeling very put upon. They're feeling like this is all so unnecessary. She would just do the things she should be doing.
Yeah. Okay, so the situation of a young couple who's really getting quite stressed because one of their mothers isn't taking care of herself, and so it's very inconvenient for them because they're having to rush over and take care of her. So it's a very good example of how it's important to take care of yourself for the benefit of others. Yeah, because when we push and then we get sick because we haven't, taken care of ourselves, it can be very inconvenient for other people. Mm-hmm. That does not mean we should feel guilty when we get sick. Okay?
No.
Yeah, feeling guilty when we get sick is just another self-centered way. Okay. Yeah. But if you really think about it, because we're so interdependent, that if you keep yourself as healthy and balanced as you can, given that you have a body that by nature gets sick and old, then, you're doing a favor to yourself and to everybody else. It's like, when they make the laws that you have to wear a helmet when you're on the motorcycle. Some people really object to that. They say it's my life, and if I want to kill myself, it's okay, it's my life. But I disagree, because if there's an accident, somebody else, if there's an accident and you're killed because you didn't wear a helmet, somebody else is going to feel horrible, even though it was an accident and they didn't intend it. They're still going to feel horrible. Yeah? So you've got to think of other people besides yourself. I think it's often the thing in cases of suicide. People are thinking, I'm suffering so much, I've got to stop my own suffering. They're not thinking of the suffering of the people who care about them and how their actions are going to affect other people. Yeah. So this is the whole thing we're trying to do, is to, I'm not talking about being a people pleaser, and I'm not talking about trying to become what you think they think you should be, because that is all self-centeredness. I'm talking about just realizing that other people have feelings and that what we do affects them. Yeah? And so we can't save them from suffering. Sometimes we have to tell people bad news, or we have to do things that they're not going to like. Okay? But we don't do those things because we want to hurt them. Yeah? Sometimes you have to break up a relationship because it's not a healthy relationship. If you can do it with kindness, that's very different than doing it with anger. Okay? So there's many things like this. Sometimes you have to tell somebody, you have to be the messenger of bad news. Yeah? But you aren't the messenger because you want to inflict somebody with harm. You're doing it because this is, what they have to learn or what they have to hear at some particular time. Okay. So let's stop and do some meditation. So we talked a lot about the kindness of others. A lot about that. We talked about how helping others is the same as helping ourselves. That we don't have to feel that we need to choose between helping others and helping ourselves if we have the proper mind, the proper mental mind thinking in the proper way. Okay. What else did we talk about? Interdependence, yeah.
Cultivating satisfaction.
Yes, cultivating satisfaction. Mm-hmm.
Realizing impermanence.
Yeah, realizing impermanence. A little way of how to deal with resistance.
Not listening to the sneaky, self-centered voice.
Yeah, not listening to that sneaky, self-centered voice. You know, and how to work with it. Yeah.
Wishing sentient beings to have happiness beyond the happiness of this world.
Right. Yeah. So the importance of wishing people to have happiness beyond worldly happiness, the happiness that comes from practicing the Dharma, and that entails also wishing them to have all the external circumstances and internal circumstances so that they can really practice.
Everything we benefit from, absolutely everything we benefit from, is a result of others.
Yeah.
Concrete to water systems to roads, from tree pruning to yada yada yada.
Yeah. That anything we have in our lives is due to the kindness and efforts of others. Yeah. We're not independent beings.
The self-centered mind's tactics.
Yes, the sneakiness and subterfuge of the self-centered mind, and a little bit about how to recognize that.
Ants and bees.
Ants
and bees.
Ants and bees, yes. Okay, so I think that gives you enough to contemplate for 10, 15 minutes. 10, 15 lifetimes.